OMG, as the kids say these days. What's up, everybody? I'm here to do another tour. Today we're doing the Meatpacking District. Before we start, I'm going to lower my mask. Believe me, there is no one around. And look, if we go around people, I'll put it back on, so chill out. This is the Hudson River, the beautiful Hudson River. Oh my God, that's so great. There's a little island. It's a park being developed, $250 million, being developed by a guy named Barry Diller. We'll talk about him in a bit. But before we start this whole tour, I just want to say, please subscribe. That would really help out. I'm about to dump a lot of information on you. I dare you to try to find someone who's putting stuff out like I am with this much info on. I dare you. Good luck, I've looked. So just go ahead and subscribe, give it a like, that helps a lot. And this tour today is being chosen by my Patreon people. So, go check out the Patreon. That really helps. Trying to grow this thing. But other than that, this is a really cool neighborhood, man. You guys are gonna love it. It's gonna be a quick little tour, so that's be good. Phil, you ready to do this thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So guys, we are walking on 15th Street. We're walking away from the Hudson River. Meatpacking District stretches from the Hudson River pretty much over to 9th Avenue, which we're walking towards now. We're actually walking by what is called Chelsea Markets behind me. This here is the Chelsea Markets behind me. This building was actually bought by Google a few years ago for $2.4 billion. How's that for a number? Yeah, it's real estate in New York, but Chelsea Market's like a nice little shopping mall here, a little flea market and everything. I'll put some B-roll in there, so chill out. We can't go in there because, Google, they don't want us filming in there. We're just, nobodies. Maybe if I was, Anthony Bourdain or something, they'd let me in there one day. So anyways, the cool thing about this building, though, is that it used to be, it's also, by the way, home to the YouTube offices here in New York City, where YouTubers and people who make YouTube videos can go and use all their stuff. It's kind of cool. Home to the Oxygen Network, Food Network, but it's all there now. But what it used to be is even cooler. Let's cross here, Phil, so we get out of this light. This used to be the Nabisco Factory. So in 1890, a few bakeries consolidated to form a company of bakeries, and they set up shop. Then in 1898, they consolidated with other bakeries in Chicago, creating this massive company. Nabisco, National Biscuit Company. Oh. So in 1898, they create this big, basically headquarters, and it's all these buildings that were combined over time to create the factory for Nabisco. So it's here that in 1912, the Oreo cookie was invented. Oh, isn't that crazy? Look at this building. This is where the Oreo cookie was invented. They were here until the late 1950s when they moved to New Jersey. But there's lots of cool stuff inside that still kind of shows you what this building used to be like, what it was like inside. E.B. White did a piece on Nabisco in 1931, I believe, where he documented how they come up with new stuff. And he said that the way that they tested new items was that they would leave them outside where the water cooler was pretty much for all the employees. And whatever was the most popular, they would start giving names to and start trying to develop like that. Pretty cool. So what you have here in this neighborhood is a repurposed neighborhood. This used to actually be a meatpacking district, sure, but even before that was something else. So in the early 1800s, this was pretty much farmland. In fact, a man who owned a lot of it was named John Jacob Astor. We'll get to him in a second. Now, in 1812, there was the War of 1812 with the British, and the Americans had gotten beat up here in New York City by the British during the War of Independence pretty bad. In fact, the British took New York City right at the beginning of that war and made it their headquarters. So when the War of 1812 came, New York City was like, not this time, baby. So they built all these forts all around. They built Castle Clinton down on Battery Park. They built Castle Williams on Governor's Island. They built Fort Wood, which is now where the Statue of Liberty rests. And they built Fort Gansevoort, which was right here in this neighborhood. Gansevoort, named after Peter Gansevoort, who was a Revolutionary War hero. So that's built. And we're going to see the area where that was built for 1812. Oh, here, by the way, we're walking by the Starbucks Reserve Roastery. This is so corny. It's like this really fancy, Starbucks, just to overcharge you for bad coffee. Here's a little connection with Starbucks. Starbucks is named after a character in the book Moby Dick named Starbuck, the first mate. And Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick, used to work in the Meatpacking District. Come on, that's pretty good.
Pretty solid.
Come on. What tour guide is going to give you knowledge like that? Anyways, here to the left, you also have the old Homestead Steakhouse, one of the oldest restaurants in New York. 1868. It's been owned by the same family for like 70 years. Here's a little interesting fact. They actually claim to have invented the doggy bag, the term doggy bag. A lot of people were using the similar things. They called them all kinds of things. But they claim to have invented and coined the term doggy bag. So the way it came about was in the 1940s during World War II, rations were like limited and stuff, so people didn't want to waste food, so they took this food home to their pets. It was encouraged because before then it was frowned upon to take your leftovers home. It was considered gross and like uncouth, as they say. Here to the left too, you have what they call the Little Flatiron Building. This was built here in 1849. Pretty cool little building. You guys know the Flatiron Building? That's over in on Madison Square Park. But they actually used that for Glenn Close's apartment in the movie Fatal Attraction, and also for a Spice Girls video. The video for Two Becomes One. You remember that song, Phil? It was the one that was like, I need some love like I never needed love before. Gotta make up to you, baby. You know that one? You recognize that? Really? When two become one. All right, that's enough. Here to the left you have Fjallraven. This is kind of cool. It means Arctic fox in Swedish, but they make these like little backpacks that have become really trendy with like models and young women and stuff. So now today you have all these repurposed buildings. So what happened was in 1812, you had this fort here, right? Then as the city starts expanding out, this man like John Jacob Astor, they start developing land around here to be like row houses in like the 1840s, 1830s. And so people start moving out here the way they did in places like Soho, etc. But as the 1800s developed, the mid-1800s, a freight railway depot was built around here. So that attracted a lot of industry from downtown. So like places in Tribeca, I actually talked about this in my Tribeca video. Sick plug, baby, come on. They started moving north to get out of all that, to get more space. So they started setting up shop here. So then in 1884, Gansevoort Market is opened here. And that was a huge deal. It specialized in things like produce. And then in 1889, the Washington Street Market is open in the same area, and it specialized in meat and all kinds of different things as well. So in the early 1900s, it slowly starts specializing in meat. Meat starts becoming the dominant thing. The produce moves away, the poultry moves away, other things move away, but meat stays put. So by like the mid-1900s, that's what this place was. It was all meat, the Meatpacking District. There were like 250 different meat markets, slaughterhouses, all kinds of distributors, etc. And you still see all these like steel awnings and everything that date back to this all protected buildings. Watch out, Phil. There's no way. You don't want to get run away. You don't want to get run over by a Maybach. A Maybach. What a way to go, get run over by the most expensive car. Here to the left is Highline Stages. This is kind of cool. That you know the TV show Power, Phil?
Yes.
That was the Truth nightclub in Power.
Yes.
I don't know if you recognize that. It's kind of cool. Speaking of TV shows, this is a really popular neighborhood for TV shows because Sex and the City was really huge with the Meatpacking District because it's become like this snazzy, like fashionista type neighborhood. And actually, Samantha used to live here. And also here, Diane Von Furstenberg is where Carrie called Samantha to tell her she was getting married to Big. OMG. I know, spoiler alert, she gets stood up at the altar. So by the 1960s, 70s, this neighborhood started to become kind of a dump. And it started to have like this edginess that by the 1990s, they started to try to take advantage of. In the 1980s and everything, this was really a lot of like prostitution, sex clubs, going out and stuff like that. So by the 1990s, they tried to take advantage of this and making it like an edgy place. And they started opening like fashionable bars and fashionable boutiques, like Diane Von Furstenberg. Diane Von Furstenberg. She married into a German aristocracy, the Vons. You know how like the German aristocracy all had the Vons? That's where she got her name. Kept the name after divorcing her husband. Here to the right, you have the Standard Hotel, and you have the Highline Park, which I'll talk about when we get to. But this is this Highline Park and the Standard Hotel. The Standard Hotel was opened in 2009, kind of a luxury hotel. It's kind of a funny story though. When it opened, the windows are huge, and you can see right into them from down here. So it actually attracted exhibitionists. It attracted a lot of exhibitionists who like to do their stuff in those windows and have people down here just see what they're doing. So you'd be having your coffee on the Highline. You look up at some guy who's also having his coffee, butt naked, you know. happened a lot. And here to the right, you have some of the beef distributors and slaughterhouses that are still left. Hector's Diner, which has been there, I think it's been there for like 60 years, something like that. And it's always catered to the people who work in this area and whatnot. Yep. But the only reason it still exists, and the only reason those still exist, is because this building is actually owned by the city, and it gave them a break on rent, which it's still doing, until the year 2032 in exchange for letting them build the Whitney Museum right over there, which we'll talk about a little later. Let's take a look here. Oh crap, I forgot to show you something. So I was talking about, we're just walking around, who cares? This is very, throwing this all together. I mean, it's all off the top of the head. So I want to show you guys something over here though. I got to do all this, I got to fit this all in. I'm doing this for you. Okay. But I forgot to mention, this bar that used to be here. I wanted to show you guys this cool little like remnant of a cool bar that was here. But also too, I forgot to mention, Diane Von Furstenberg is actually married to Barry Diller, who, it's windy today, baby. You hear that? She's married to Barry Diller, who actually is developing the little island park that we were talking about earlier, that we started at. Also too, he owns IAC Corp, which has a building right north of here, that is a Frank Gehry building. They're the ones who own like Vimeo and I think Match.com, some other stuff. Expedia, he owns Expedia. So his building is right near here, it's kind of cool. Also too, and over there around the corner is Armani. So I was telling you guys how there's like lots of fashion. So in the 90s, little fashion boutiques started popping up here. And now people like Armani have their New York or their US headquarters here. Armani's right over there. Armani's kind of a cool story. He actually didn't start the company Armani until he was 40 years old. He sold his Volkswagen Beetle because his boyfriend told him he should, and started his own company. He was like, yeah, all right, let's do it. He was a window dresser at like a store, and he's like, all right. So he started his own fashion. It's pretty cool, huh? Here's what I wanted to show you. This is the Hogs and Heifers little emblem. This used to be a bar that was right here. So opened in 1992, I believe. And it was like very indicative of what the neighborhood was. It was real like trashy neighborhood bar. Their big thing was that they had like over 18,000 bras just saved there. And the story is that one day a drunk woman threw her bra onto the bar, and they kept it, and then it just kind of became a tradition. Even Julia Roberts threw her bra there. Ooh. Isn't that kind of cool? America's sweetheart, Julia Roberts. Ooh, ooh baby, it's windy. It is so empty here, you wouldn't believe. This neighborhood is one of those neighborhoods in New York City that when there is a lot of tourism, this neighborhood is packed with people. The Highline, you could barely walk on this thing. And everything here is super empty today. It's a weekday, it's a Monday, it's cold, it's windy. So it feels like a movie set. It's kind of nuts. But don't go start saying that New York is dead, all right? I'd like you to show me one city that isn't struggling right now. People just love to crap on New York, you know? People are jealous. New York doesn't crap on other cities because it doesn't need to. It's so funny to me how so many cities have rivalries with New York, but New York doesn't have a rivalry with any city. Here you got Tory Burch. This is kind of interesting. So this woman started her company in 2005. She started with like a little store in Nolita. She's got over 250 stores by now. Makes me feel really guilty for what I've done in the last 15 years of my life. But I'm trying, Phil. We're going to build an empire here. Here to the left, you have a liquor store. This is kind of interesting. This is just a little side. It says wine and spirits. They call liquor spirits because in Middle Eastern alchemy, when they like deal with chemicals and they're distilling chemicals down, they say that they used to say that they're getting down to the spirit of that actual material. And that's kind of what distillation of alcohol is. Did you know that, Phil? Yeah. So anyways, this is actually, this neighborhood too, I was saying, it's a big partying neighborhood. Lots of nightclubs and stuff around here. A lot of grand larceny as well. It's a big deal. Yeah, because people steal stuff, a lot of stuff. You know what they end up stealing is like fancy coats. So people get their coats stolen all the time here. And they're expensive usually. People will just come into a bar. Think about it. You just go into a club, everyone's partying and dancing. You just lift all these coats and just walk out. So that's a big problem. Or was a big problem when people were actually going out and partying. Off to the left here, you have the Gansevoort Hotel. This was the first luxury hotel opened in the area. 2004, that's pretty recent. So keep that in mind. This neighborhood, all the way through the 90s even, was still pretty sketchy. 2004, this was open. Also across the street over there, you have the Soho House. Very fancy little place. You got to be a member. Ooh, you got to pay like, you know, thousands of dollars of dues, and they have to accept you. You have to have a card and everything. It's kind of like, I don't know. A lot of this stuff is a little douchey, if you ask me. But it's a nice neighborhood. They've kept a lot of the history, which is kind of cool. So that's very good. And who knows how it's going to change. Just to give you an idea of like what Soho House, it started in London, in Soho, London. Jude Law's daughter had to be hospitalized briefly because they had her birthday party there, and she ingested like half a tablet of ecstasy that was on the ground. Yeah, his young daughter. That's to give you an idea of what that place is like. Unbelievable. There's a lot going on in that headline. Here to the left, so this is once again, you have a lot of these like little boutiques and stores. This is Hermes. And it's pronounced Hermes, by the way, okay? They make like fancy accessories like luxury scarves and ties. Hermes, okay? Not Hermes. So don't go up to your girlfriend and be like, hey, I got you a Hermes for Christmas. She'll think you're giving her an STD or something. All right, let's cross. It's been around since 1837. You can still see all the awnings that are still up. These are all what they would be hanging meats from, and like all slabs of beef. And the Highline, which used to be the railway that went through here, we would just pull up and they'd dump all the stuff on and it'd keep moving, etc. Now the Highline is right up here. The entrance to the Highline is right up here on Gansevoort. We're on Gansevoort Street, which was named in 1937 after Peter Gansevoort. But the Highline starts here and goes all the way up to like 34th. The Highline was opened in 2009. It's an elevated park, modeled after a park actually in Paris. That's an elevated park. It was opened in the 90s. But this one here used to be an elevated railway that was opened in 1934. So there used to be a railway even before then that ran along the street, right? And what happened was it was just too dangerous. There would be too many deaths. In fact, they had these guys called the West Side Cowboys that would ride in front of the trains on horseback to notify people that the train was coming. And even with that, people were getting hit. So in 1934, they elevated this train, which had been there since the late 1800s. They elevated it up to an elevated railway, which ran until 1980. They actually called this Death Avenue back in the day. So this is the entrance to the Highline, which was opened in 2009 as a park. It was actually abandoned for a long time. So the residents of the neighborhood just thought it was really ugly and they didn't want it around, so they pushed and they created the Friends of the Highline in the late 90s, early 2000s to do something with it. And then in 2009, they created the park. I guess we cross. Oh, over here to the left, you have Christian Louboutin. Ah, it's very fancy, huh? Christian Louboutin. But he's famous for his like red-soled shoes. He makes like really fancy women's shoes, the red soles underneath them. It's kind of interesting though. In 2012, he sued Yves Saint Laurent. Thank you very much. Very good accent. He sued him because he was making a red shoe with a red sole underneath, and he said the red sole is mine. So this whole case went up pretty high, and it was a big deal, saying he was trying to trademark the red-soled shoe, but you can't trademark a color. The court was like, yeah, you can't really do that. That seems a little unfair to just say a color is yours. So they didn't let him. Kind of interesting. You got lots of like these little like shops and boutiques and stuff around here. Go ahead. Go ahead. You gotta let the Mercedes pass, baby. Gotta let a Mercedes pass. All right. Oh, here to the left you have, that's another thing, man. There's a lot of like rich people here in fancy buildings and stores. You gotta keep in mind, like a lot of the architecture's been saved and the Highline has been restored, and it's always a struggle. These things are always a struggle to make nice and to keep nice, and it's always a fight. Nothing is given for free. They were trying to create massive condos here, and those were fought and beat. So it's important to remind people of that. It's not just something that happens naturally. Nothing is just gifted to us commoners, okay? It's fought for. The neighborhoods fight for them, the people of the neighborhoods fight for them, and they're protected. That's something that's an active verb. Don't forget that. Here to the right is the Whitney Museum. This is the Whitney Museum. This is a super cool building. This was built in 2015. Renzo Piano, very famous architect. Pritzker Prize winning architect, actually. The Pritzker Prize is like the Nobel Prize of architecture, given out once a year. And when you win it, it's like cha-ching. You go around the world and you just basically design things like this. But this was built in 2015. Before that, the museum was up in the Upper East Side. It was started by Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney. She was a great granddaughter of Cornelius Vanderbilt, the Commodore, baby, the guy who built Grand Central, very famous dude here in New York. But she was an artist too. She was a sculptor. She made a lot of stuff. She made a Peter Stuyvesant statue in Stuyvesant Square in the East Village. Well, not the East Village, more like Gramercy Park. But she also collected lots of art. She used her money to basically help her friends out and buy tons of their stuff. And eventually she amassed so much of it, it started to become a museum. And it was in the Upper East Side since 1966, and then they moved it here in 2015. This is a big deal. This made this whole neighborhood kind of like a formidable artistic neighborhood. And now here you have the Hudson River again. We kind of just walked around in a circle. I just wanted to show you this. Over there on the other side, down there you have Jersey City. Over here you have Hoboken, and down there you have Lower Manhattan. You can kind of see these here, pretty cool. All right, so we're gonna walk back. I wanna walk you guys back and end the tour on the actual Highline because it's pretty cool. You guys gotta see it. But I will do it. It's kind of, it deserves its own video, so I'll do a video in the future on the Highline. So chill out. Don't get all upset that I'm not gonna walk the entire Highline. But this whole neighborhood where we are right now, by the way, in the 70s and 80s was really, really, really bad. Okay, I know that's not very descriptive, but a lot of prostitution, a lot of like seediness, and like, you know, there were like tons of sex clubs and stuff, places like the mine shaft and the manhole. It was like a big gay and transvestite prostitute area. Actually, Al Pacino in the movie Cruisin', I think he passed through here a good amount. Lots of stuff, and today it's a very fancy neighborhood. And we've talked in other videos like Soho and Tribeca videos, Sick Plugs, about how they changed the names to neighborhoods to try to make them cool. Well, Meatpacking District attempted that because the fancy hoity-toity people in the neighborhood thought Meatpacking District was a little too eh. So they were actually trying to name it MIPA for a bit. MIPA, Meatpacking District. How ridiculous is that? Didn't stick. People were like, no thanks. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes they try and it doesn't work. So let's go up. You want to go up into the Highline, Phil? Let's do it. I guess I got to put on my mask here, though. So now we're going up to the Highline. Remember, a lot of this architecture is protected. These old row houses here to my right, these used to be row houses and then they were refitted. There you can see in front of me the Standard Hotel. You can see how you can actually look into those windows, man. It's pretty blatant. You can see everything. Here you can see some of the meat markets and things that are still around. You can see a great view of New Jersey. And over here to the right, you can see the Meatpacking District. I say we just walk just a little bit, huh, Phil? Let's walk to where we started. So this was all repurposed. You can still see the rails on the actual ground here, which is pretty cool. And this was all abandoned for decades. So 1980 was the last trip of the actual railway. It was delivering frozen turkeys, and then it just stopped. And it sat here abandoned. People would come up here to do all kinds of weird stuff. But it was like featured in the movie I Am Legend. You could see it all abandoned and everything. Parks are obviously nice for us commoners, but they also help the neighborhood a lot increase in value. So the Friends of the Highline knew this. People like Diane Von Furstenberg, residents of this neighborhood, and people, business owners in the neighborhood knew this, so they really pushed to have this developed because it was going to increase the land value, and that's exactly what's happened. So over time, the value of this land has gone up, skyrocketed. So all along the Highline, you have very expensive developments of condos and office buildings that have sprouted up literally in the last 10 years since this opened. For example, the biggest being the Hudson Yards development at the north end of the Highline, which continues all the way. I'll do a video on this soon, but you can see to the right all the different buildings of the Meatpacking District. Oh man, it's windy. Holy Lord. So we walked under the Standard Hotel, which by the way is also famous for being the hotel that Jay-Z got into a fight with Solange Knowles in the elevator. Solange Knowles assaults Jay-Z. You remember that, Phil? Yeah. That was the Standard. The elevator video. That's right. Oh, by the way, Jay-Z got his name from the J and the Z subway line that ran near his apartment in Brooklyn. It's a good fact. You guys who are watching that, I hope you realize you're going to remember that for the rest of your life. And it's thanks to me. I changed your life. I also forgot to mention earlier that This whole area used to be a place called Sapokanakin, which was a trading post for the Native Americans back in the 1600s. And Gansevoort Street, they say, was the eastward kind of path connecting it to the rest of the island. Here to the right too, you have the Giorgio Armani that I was telling you about. Pretty cool. That's right, he didn't start his company until 40 years old. Gives hope for people like me. Although I have like 17 years till I'm 40 because I'm only 23 years old. Got a cool little view here. So that's Pier 55, which is where they're building the little park. And then you have Pier 54 over it next to it, which used to be owned by the Cunard White Star Line. Because around right here on the corner you have Chelsea Piers, which was Piers 59 through 62, owned by the White Star Line, and that's where the Titanic was supposed to arrive. But then Pier 54 was where the Lusitania left from when it was sunk, and it precipitated the entrance into World War I by the United States. Also where the Carpathia arrived. The Carpathia arrived with the survivors of the Titanic in 1912. Look at that. All right, that's some good stuff. It's pretty cool. You have the little overhang that used to lead from the Nabisco Factory right across. We were walking down this earlier. We're gonna walk over to the other side and end here pretty soon. But another thing that's important, I was making fun of Starbucks earlier. Some of you guys are probably gonna get defensive, like, oh, I drink Starbucks every day. All right, chill out, okay? One of the reasons I do that is because New York is famous for its small business. That's what keeps this place diverse and interesting. That's what makes it separate from so many other cities in the United States. Because in other places you have giant strip malls and franchises. It makes every place is the same. That's one of the beauties of New York. You have these places that you don't have people who work there for 2 years and then leave. You have people who've worked there their whole lives, who've managed it their whole lives. Their whole life and blood, sweat, and tears is invested in each of these places, which makes them part of the community. All these places, Starbucks, are not part of the community. They're run by these giant corporations who are just trying to suck money out, and they're not really invested in making the community nice. They're there. If the community turns, they leave as well, or they only come. They're basically fair weather fans. That's why I make fun of stuff like that. And in New York, that has changed a lot. In fact, here's a story. 7-Eleven, the store 7-Eleven pulled out of New York in the 1980s completely because bodegas were so popular and the convenience stores were so popular. People weren't having it. New York started to change. It started to get more, I guess, developed, and it was more transient. A lot of people who were more transients. They weren't really as serious about the city. They were probably, more like, it was becoming more yuppified, I guess. And in 2005, they reopened to try their luck again, and it exploded. There's 7-Elevens all over the place, and they're basically, pushing out the old bodegas and that kind of model. And the problem with this is that with the land value and the rents going up so high, it's making it very difficult for small businesses to open here and to maintain themselves here. So this is all important because small businesses can't survive. When the rents are too expensive, it doesn't matter how many empanadas you sell. You're not going to be able to pay those astronomical rents, and the only people who can pay those rents are franchises. So it really hurts the community. It hurts the neighborhood. Off in the distance, speaking of which, you could see the Hudson Yards development, which just recently opened. We'll do a video on that another day. All right, check it out, Phil. You can see through this window here. It's a cool little area. People sit here when it's nice in the summer, taking views of Chelsea back there. But I think this is a good place to end the video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the Meatpacking District. We'll do the Highline another day, all right? Chill out. But this is a really cool neighborhood, really great history. They've done a good job of preserving a lot of the history and the buildings and preventing, overdevelopment of the Meatpacking District. Around it, it's gone up and it's been changed a lot, which is another story. And the rents are getting very high, which is another story. But these are all things that we fight for. You got to fight for these things. You got to protect things in the city that you like, that you want to keep seeing. Otherwise, the forces that we take over. So up to the north, you have all of this is Chelsea. I'll talk about that in another video as well. There's infinite playgrounds here in New York. We can do videos in every single one of these neighborhoods, and I'm excited to do that. Speaking of which, if you like the video, please subscribe. It's the least you could do. Come on. Even if you didn't like it, subscribe. You never know. Maybe down the road you'll like one. You could also like the video too. That helps. And also too, more importantly, please check out the Patreon. The Patreon's a big deal for me. I'm trying to really grow this. No one's giving you this type of information. It's nuts. It's almost nuts. A tour guide friend of mine said to me, "What are you doing? You're giving away all your information." First of all, this isn't everything. Okay. Second of all, why not? This is the coolest city in the world, man. And you know, there are other cities to explore and other places to explore, but this is what makes a city great, is the stories, the information, the history. It gives richness. It gives people connection to these places, and that in turn protects the city. It gives people an investment in them. So I'm gonna keep doing it, baby, whether you like it or not. You know, so I don't know what to tell you. We made it to the end. Like I said, please check out the Patreon, it'd be great. Phil, you got anything you want to say?
No, good.
It was a pretty quick little tour, right?
It was really fast.
Yeah, really fast. What are you saying, too fast? Huh? Sorry. But yeah, I don't know what to tell you guys. We did it. We did it. See y'all later. Sick.